were talking about fiber optics earlier, and a lot of the stuff you sounded like all of this would happen within a closed system. But then you started talking about stained glass. So are there applications of this where it could refract visible light or something and do some kind of camouflage, or are there other applications other than stained glass that aren't within like a closed system like fiber optics?
Right. Yes and yes. So the first thing is that uh, these materials can be used as sensors. So light will come from wherever it comes, and it will say change the sensor will be plasmonic and all of a sudden resonate and then send an electrical signal to a gizmo, which will register the presence of something like movement, if you will, or it could be even you could maybe one day we'll be able to smell with light. So so you can use these things very much as sensors where the material can expand and contract. So you can use them as heat sensors or pressure sensors. So this is something that is an open system, and then you could design, say, something where you are making an optical switch within a machine itself as a component. And the idea is that maybe an optical switch will work faster than an electrical switch and maybe not generate heat. And because, the closer the packing of, chips in a computer, well, the chips generate heat. And so for thermal management, wouldn't it be nice not to have to manage any thermal and instead you're doing optical? Again, a little bit of pie in the sky, but at the same time, how are you going to build it? How are you going to quantify it? Well, trial and error goes a long way, but the equations of physics actually work, and they can be mined to tell you quantitatively what to do. And in addition to that, there's now this AI. So, this deep learning and neural networks, and so they're they're running a simulation, and they run many simulations. They train the neural net, but some of the outcomes or predictions are made don't have any physical merit. So what happens is that we can use these models developed using Maxwell's equation to sort of train the neural networks or guide the neural networks in their training to give you physics-based outcomes, so that later on you'll be able to design things like, what's the geometry needed on a resonator, a micro resonator, such that I will resonate at this frequency. What is that? And I could use neural nets to figure it out with this physics aided guiding coming from Maxwell's equation. So it's and this is just the beginning, by the way. So I keep thinking, life is going to, simmer down and stop changing, but it's actually doing the opposite.
Okay, now you were saying that it could be used for motion detection, and I'm thinking this is also outside our visible spectrum. So would that be for like detecting like gases that can be deadly, or what would that be used for?
Exactly, a gas sensor is very, very, gas coming at you or various things.
I mean, could it detect like, hey, this sunlight is so powerful, you're going to get a sunburn, or would that not?
Oh yeah. You can intensity. Yeah, and that could be done, in many ways. But these sort of things could be invoked as well. I would say the primary use right now of these metamaterials is in the sensing area. So something occurs, it senses it, sends a signal, and then maybe, pulls a robotic arm back or whatnot. So how creatively you want to use the information. But the idea is that it's lightweight and small.
Okay. Now, for those of us who are not trained in the ways of the mathematics. Could you give us like a layperson's explanation of Maxwell's equations?
Okay, okay. So basically, what is television, for example? So so basically, how do you transmit information across empty space? Okay, so what Maxwell's equation does is it shows you and quantifies how signals travel uh, through empty space from point A to point B. So I want to turn on my flashlight and do an SOS to somebody. You know, we're in a dark building and I SOS, and somebody's 100 yards away and they see it. Um, what happened there? Why did that occur? And the answer is that it's explained through Maxwell's equation. The light that you are perceiving with your eyes is actually, for better or worse, an electromagnetic field, meaning that it's electric and it's magnetic. And so there are two fields that are occurring, and the intensity of these fields gives you the brightness of the light or not. These fields are actually more complicated and actually have what is called a polarization, meaning that the fields actually have a direction. But our eyes don't see the direction of the fields. So the fields are actually oriented in various directions and could be, at right angle. They're always at right angles to each other, but they're both oscillating at different frequencies or slightly out of phases. They're not oscillating many times at the same frequencies, but out of phase. And that gives you what is called a polarization. And the animal bees can see this, and this is how they're such good navigators. Okay, because they can know where the north is because the sunlight gets polarized by the atmosphere. What Maxwell's equation, so then what you want to do is you want a means to calculate how bright these fields are, what these fields are doing through air. And, when someone sends you a signal, how fast does it decay before I won't be able to perceive it anymore? And so these equations quantify all of these things. So it's easier to say what the equations do than write down the equations. So let us just say the following. How were Maxwell's equations arrived at? And they're arrived at two ways. One, experiment, motivated by curiosity. Then once they understood it, then they could codify it using mathematics. Once they codified it appropriately using mathematics, then you could just use mathematics to guess what the fields were going to do next or how you do it. So the equations allow us to predict, and that has been as you might have noticed in the last 400 years, our standard of living has improved. Okay? Why? Well, Maxwell's equations. Why? Well, we as a species learn about them, and they're a short circuit into how things work. And it's sort of like a plenum. You can go a plenum, little space between walls. You can go from one area to the next using math and effortlessly and connect things that are thousands of miles away, but you took only 2 steps because you know these Jedi tricks, okay, which are really Jedi tricks. But what is great is, again, a standard undergraduate college education will give you all those Jedi tricks, and then you can go out and make friends everywhere you go.